We just want to thank everybody for coming back to the interview, the conversation that we're going to have with Mick Jenkins and Jamila Woods. You know, we've been talking about Black death, premature Black death. We've been talking about mourning, what it means to remember the dead, what it means to not just remember the dead, but to resurrect what's been left in its wake. So not just resisting oppression, but imagining freedom. And in that spirit, we wanted to bring together two of our favorite, me and Heath's favorite artists that we listen to all the time. So it's really actually a pleasure to just be here with y'all and really emphasize that, you know, this moment that we're in is also about art. It's also about joy. It's also about imagination and play and sensuality, the things that make us human. And so we hope that y'all just enjoy it as much as I know I am going to. And with that said, we're gonna have Destiny come forward and read their bios.
Hi. Poet and vocalist Jamila Woods was raised in Chicago, Illinois, and graduated from Brown University, where she earned a bachelor's in Africana Studies and Theater Performance Studies. Thank you. Influenced by Lucille Clifton and Gwendolyn Brooks, much of her writing explores Blackness, womanhood, and the city of Chicago. Her first chapbook, The Truth About Dolls, was inspired by a Toni Morrison quote and features a Pushcart-nominated poem about Frida Kahlo. Her poetry is included in the anthologies The Breakbeat Poets, New American Poetry in the Age of Hip Hop, Courage, Daring Poems for Gutsy Girls, and The Uncommon Core, Contemporary Poems for Learning and Living. Mick Jenkins is a Chicago-based rapper who has released the mixtape, The Pursuit of Nappiness, Trees and Truths, and most recently, The Healing Component. These two artists will be in conversation with Nyle and Heath Pearson.
All right, so we wanted to get started by asking just a couple of questions to break the ice. That's cool. So I just need to know, Cheetos or Doritos?
Doritos.
Doritos, Cooler Ranch or
Spicy nacho.
Spicy
Same.
nacho? Okay.
Definitely.
Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or one duck-sized horse? 100 duck-sized horses.
Wait.
Would you rather fight one duck-sized horse or 100? No. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
Probably the one horse-sized
Probably
duck.
the horses. Honestly.
The 100 duck-sized horses.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't see how I'm killing this duck. I wouldn't choke it. I don't know.
So log cabin in the woods or penthouse on the 49th floor?
Log cabin.
I'd say penthouse. In Chicago, though.
Spicy or mild?
Spicy.
Spicy.
Call or text?
Call.
Text.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Power Rangers?
Turtles.
I would say Ninja Turtles too.
Yeah.
Me too. Planet Earth or Frozen Planet?
Never seen Frozen Planet. I'd say Planet Earth.
Planet Earth.
I don't know that.
To Pimp a Butterfly or Good Kid, Mad City?
Good kid.
I would say Good Kid, Mad City too.
Reform or revolution?
Both.
I was gonna say, shouldn't they be together? Yeah.
Remy or Nikki?
I don't know. Remy, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, I say Nikki.
Cocoa butter or shea butter?
I really do wonder what's the difference. They serve the same purpose.
I say shea butter, but really coconut oil.
Salt and pepper or sugar in your grits?
Salt and pepper, but I've done both, for sure.
Salt and pepper, for sure. No sugar.
I'm not gonna say what I do because I know how black folks treat this question. Okay, so, all right, Martin or Fresh Prince?
Martin.
Say Fresh Prince.
Barbecue or ranch sunflower seeds?
Barbecue.
Oh, gross.
I just don't do ranch.
I don't like sunflower seeds.
And 2 albums for the rest of your life on a deserted island.
Who was Jill Scott 2000? I don't know. I listen to that more than anything else. So that's
I would say Erykah Badu, but I can't decide which one. Yeah. Oh.
Late Registration and Who was Jill Scott 2000? Yeah. That could just change in 5 years.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, see when the deserted island comes, I guess. Okay, so in this department, we're trained to sit with the people who came before us, to read slowly and to engage deeply, and to understand our work following after and engaging within that tradition. So if we think of your own artistic tradition, who are the musicians who expand your horizons, the authors with prose that moves you, and the visual artists who lift your spirits? And how do those connect in your music?
Okay. I think, well, Erykah Badu is a really huge influence on me. And I think the way that, as a singer, she's so influenced by hip hop is really important to me. And I think, yeah, I like to sample a lot, and not just, I'm not a producer, but just in the way that I write, I think a lot about nostalgia and how to reference things that kind of piece together worlds in my mind, like from things that I've experienced. So I think the way that she is in the tradition of hip hop was a big influence on me. Visual art, I think Frida Kahlo is a really one of my favorite artists because of the way that she has a lot of the times when she would experience pain, the way that she would kind of, one of her quotes said, like, when she had her injury and she couldn't walk, she was bedridden, she was like, feet, what do I need them for if I have wings to fly? And I like thinking of that sort of transcendence, I think, is really impactful to me. And I think, because you were mentioning before, I think a lot about the Black church also, which is not necessarily it's not one artist, but it's a community that I think also I grew up hearing a lot of that language of transcendence, like I go ahead to prepare a place for you, like kind of like that ability to imagine a world beyond, not just in terms of heaven, but like in terms of anything, like in terms of whatever it is that I'm trying to create, that's like a world beyond where I am presently, the act of making. So
Jill Scott has probably been one of the biggest influences for me musically, in the way that I sing, actually. I've been singing a lot more lately, just melody, and the melody is super important to making a song stick, I feel. I've come to learn, and I use all of hers. My mother listened to her music. I probably was the only 11-year-old boy who knew every word to these songs, you know what I'm saying? I just heard it all the time, you know? It wasn't even like, oh, I like this. It was just kind of like, I know this already, you know? And it just stuck with me. It's absolutely shaped the way that I listen to music. And because these are things that have been so familiar with me since I was 11 years old, humming different riffs and parts of songs, and, you know, to be in the studio, looking for melodies, hers come all the time. I do them in different octaves. I take some notes out and leave just any type of way that I can manipulate these things that, because I'm not a great singer, have been comfortable for me reciting and singing since I was, 11 years old. So I just kind of use those and manipulate those as much as possible because of how I lack with my voice. Visually, I don't know that there's one artist. I was always inspired by movies. I was always inspired by really good movies. Very early on, I got put on the Reservoir Dogs, probably before I should have been watching it. And the scene where he is telling the story about running into the police with a pound of marijuana on his person, and he runs into like 5 police in the bathroom. And the way they told the story, and the way they shot the story, really, really stuck with me. And I think that birthed an affinity for good cinema. And I think I take it to heart when I try to, affect the world with my own visual representation, whether it be Instagram or music videos or what have you. It's clearly progressed and grown into something a lot more than just that initial infatuation. But I think that is, movies has definitely inspired me in that way, for sure.
Yeah, so kind of thinking about, part of what I'm hearing you talk about is a sort of care and attention and intentionality. And so kind of in that spirit, you rap in your new project on the intro, which I love, the keys to, you say, why is praising mediocrity such a skill? It bothers me when rich niggas with minds below poverty lines get to play like they're Socrates. Mm-hmm. So my question is, what does it mean to reject mediocrity in your work? And I want to start with you, Mick, and then open it up to you, Jamila.
I will often round off a verse or sing in the place of effort for me. That's something that I do all the time. And I think for me, that is a place where I'm regularly rejecting mediocrity. I have to make myself not do that. You know what I'm saying? I'll be working on a song that is tantalizing to an untrained ear like Martyrs, right? But when you really hear what I'm saying, it's laced with a lot of heavy information, right? And to finish that, it took me 4 weeks, and in the last week, I just wanted to hurry up and get it done. You know what I'm saying? And I will sometimes. And that's a place where I'm regularly like, it's not that it was bad, I don't feel like I write, crap ever. That's not my purpose to write BS, you know what I'm saying? So, and it won't be, but it's just not what I know I can do, you know what I'm saying? And in that sense, it's just average for me. And in speaking to those lines, I just feel like with the way that we acknowledge things that should have been done already. My mother used to tell me, you don't get credit for doing stuff that you're supposed to do. You know what I'm saying? Like the way that we acknowledge things that should be done already, and things that are just a smidget above, the status quo. I feel like it almost takes a skill to be able to congratulate somebody for being so average. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what that's what that was.
Yeah, I like that line. I think I have like a phobia of mediocrity as well, like in my own work. But I think sometimes I write a song and it just feels like it poured through me, and I didn't have to work at it, and it's done and it's finished, and I really love it. But I want to become more comfortable with writing. Like a lot of my friends, they write every day. Like they wake up at a certain time in the morning and write every day. But when you do that, sometimes it's not good all the time, and I think I just don't like that feeling of writing something and having it not be good. So I almost want to push myself to be more comfortable with making stuff that's not good all the time, so that I can make more often and not just when it's like those moments where it doesn't even feel like I'm really doing it.
Okay, yeah. So then, following that, to read a couple some lyrics from one of your songs, LSD. You open with, "A body of water inside me reminds me of oceans, though I've never known one. I'm born by a cold one. It's only a small one compared to the coast. I prefer it to most. I like water that don't burn my eyes when they open. I won't let you criticize my city like my skin. It's so pretty. If you don't like it, just leave it alone. You gotta love me like I love the lake." So I'm from Indiana. My mama's here in the second row from Indiana, too. I've been in New Jersey for 7 years now, so I don't know what that makes me, but an angry driver, I guess. But early on, I was embarrassed to be from public schools in Indiana out here. After all these years, I've come to kind of appreciate my Midwest upbringing and see it as a significant dimension of my own creativity and perspective and my own work as an academic. So geography, location, blocks, place, these things seem important in your work, in both of your work, actually. So what is the significance for you of being from the Midwest, specifically Chicago, with Rahm Emanuel defunding public schools to increase police budgets or murder judges, with the Black resistance that's as well, or to your own artistic work? How do you see geography being a part of that place?
Yeah, I think Chicago is a really large inspiration because it's where my family's from, it's where I grew up, and how I was taught to write poetry. Like my first poetry teachers were really in the tradition of Gwendolyn Brooks and other poets from Chicago who are always writing about what they know, write what's under your nose is what she said. And so that really influences my songwriting. And I think that as a high schooler, when I was learning poetry for the first time, I didn't really think my story was that interesting. Like I didn't really think, I grew up in different neighborhoods on the South Side, predominantly Beverly, which is like a mostly Irish immigrant neighborhood, and my family was like this one Black family on my block, and I just thought my story was kind of boring, or just, you know, being a quiet person and not having a life that has all these interesting things like stories I would read. And I think that Gwendolyn Brooks, in the tradition of her, understanding that the more specific and the more detail I can get in telling my story is actually what makes it like no one else can tell my story better than I can. And so to kind of delve into that is something that Chicago has given me as an artist. And I think water is also something I notice in my poems or songs, like I just am kind of obsessed with water, I guess. And I remember when my dad was first teaching me from the South Side, like when I would go downtown to go to school and stuff, my dad tried to teach me directions. I'm still really bad at directions, but the east is where the lake is, and that was kind of like my orienting point. And I feel like you can really feel it, like when you're somewhere, you can feel like the wind, or like it's more open in a certain direction. And I just like that about Chicago, how I feel like it's in my body, like the way that the city is laid out. So
I was born in Alabama, and I moved to Chicago when I was 10. And for me, I left in Alabama a lot of, like, my mother and father were splitting up. The whole thing was crazy. I was back and forth between their places, and I just left that in Huntsville. And when I moved to Chicago, it was just about my Chicago family, my mother's side of the family, and like I was ready to accept Chicago so much, you know, and I did. And so now I'll be like, yeah, I'm from Chicago. You know what I'm saying? Without people really not knowing that. A lot of people used to tell me, no, you're not. You know what I'm saying? Like, you weren't born from, ain't you from Alabama? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so to be able to rep Chicago and not need anybody else's validation, but know that this is a city where I grew into who I was and where I came to understand the world and understand myself. I'd love to be able to say that. I think Chicago is an amazing city. I think it is a city where you have to really find it. You know, whatever you're looking for, I think you have to find it. I always tell people it's not a place where you can go for a weekend and say you tasted that. You know what I'm saying? You need a week. You know, I think you could go to New York and LA and you have a taste of it for a weekend. You know, I don't think that can happen in Chicago at all unless you are with people who know where it is. And again, whatever you may be looking for. I think it is people don't realize how segregated it is. I was encouraged at a young age to get out on the train and go see the city. And, you know, if you sit on 95th on the south side on the red line and ride it all the way to Howard on the north side, it's a mirage of people and how it changes gradually. You know what I'm saying? How the color of people changes. It's insane, actually. And doing that, moving through all those spaces, being on the south side and being on different areas of the south side, and then being downtown, and then being in different pockets of downtown, and then going to Howard Park and seeing a completely different black person in Howard Park than I saw deep south on 95th, and then going to Wicker Park where I met Jamila and have known about all these different places that hold all these different people, and then coming to YCA and seeing this melting pot of young people who don't give, you know, who don't care about any of that other stuff, you know what I'm saying? Who don't care about the segregation and all the separation. And, you know, all of that was just crazy to me in retrospect. You know, I think I was looking at it all wide-eyed and googly-eyed, and I was enticed by being able to experience it and learn from it. And, you know, being what I am today and thinking the way I do and trying to put out the message that I do in this world, taking a step outside of myself and looking at that, I feel like it's an amazing, like, I just look at me and Jamila Woods and Chance the Rapper and Saba and No Name and all of these different people who grew up in the same areas, right? But all over Chicago. And look at what they're doing and look at what they're saying. You know what I'm saying? And look at how it's affecting people. It's like, that is so crazy amazing. Like, whoever started Young Chicago Artists had no idea that they were going to have this many people affecting this many people. You know what I'm saying? Like this. It's just like, Chicago is doing that. The city of Chicago is doing that. You know, we all found each other. You know, like, it's amazing. It's insane to me. And I don't feel like, you know, Huntsville, Alabama wasn't gonna do that for me. You know, I don't feel that in New York. I don't get that. I don't. You know, and to your original question, it just makes community, block, city. You know, it just makes that so much more important. You know.
We're gonna ask just a few more questions, and then we're gonna open it up to the audience. My question is to both of you. What I love about both of your music is that it's more than a response to oppression, something I said when we first started the conversation. At the heart, it's a bold declaration that Black is beautiful and that freedom is about more than resisting white supremacy. It's about imagination, it's about freedom dreams, what Robin Kelly calls freedom dreams, sensuality, crushes, relationships, the stuff of everyday life. So I just want to hear you kind of speak a little bit more to that, how complex and layered some of your music is, moving, you know, within these sort of different concepts.
I think people don't realize, or at least my fans don't realize how much of my life is in my music. You know, and I think that's something that, for myself, especially, you know, when Drowning came out or when Martyrs came out, people love to say that you are this protest person, or that's what you make your music for, or, you know, you're here to fill that void, or, you know, whatever jargon they want to use to kind of make that point. But just like you said, like, you know, freedom is more than what did you say? Resisting oppression, man. Like, it is, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like in the midst of resisting oppression, people can forget that, and that becomes what freedom means. And I don't ever want to represent that in any way, because that's really just not what I'm doing. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm just speaking about my life. You know, I'm just speaking about things that I experienced, period. You know what I'm saying? I'm giving my opinion on it, and I'm giving my feelings on it. And if everybody else who's experienced this feels the same way, well, it's because that's what it is. You know what I'm saying? It's not because I'm trying to protest or I'm trying to resist oppression or I'm trying to, you know what I'm saying? It's not to say that I shy away from those things, but I like to be clear about what it is I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, and why. And I think that in itself is something to be clear about. It's like, I am not choosing to write about this. I'm not trying. This is just so much a part of my life, you know what I'm saying, that I have to speak about it like this. And I think that is so much more powerful than saying I'm doing it for this reason, when it's true, you know what I'm saying? And it is, and I definitely be wanting to make that apparent. And being in that space all the time and still needing the space to speak about the good things that happen in your life and, you know, the breakups or whatever it may be, because that's all in there too, definitely creates a bit of confusion sometimes. I've definitely had to wonder, am I doing too much? Am I going too hard? And do people want to hear this from me? You know, I don't know. I don't think you ever get away from those kinds of thoughts, but I constantly have to remind myself that it's me. It's what I want to do. It's my life. It's what I'm trying to create, and not be bound by those things, even if you consider them. Yeah, I guess that's what I have to say about it generally.
Yeah, I really feel that, like what you're saying about how it's your life and it's happening. It's not like writing about something to be political or to make protest music. I think about that a lot. And I think about when I was in choir in high school, my choir director would tell a story of how Martin Luther King, when he was marching, like whenever he got tired, he would ask the choir to sing Precious Lord, which is just a really soothing gospel song. And like some of the lyrics are like, I'm tired, I'm weak, I'm worn, like take my hand, Lord. And it's like not the type of song you would think of when you think of protest music, but it's actually literally a song that was very useful to people protesting. And I think of that a lot because I think that I like to try to think of all the emotions that I've had and consider them all like equally valid, right? So if I feel lonely or if I feel really excited or in love or all of those things are worthy of being written about in songs or in poems. And yeah, I think that's part of for anyone, like being free is being able to be however it is that you feel and not feel like you're not being blank enough, like not being whatever. Yeah, so.
So you both work with really complex concepts in your music, concepts like THC, water, black girl magic, love. And each of these concepts appears in your art as both deeply personal and radically political, which I think follows what we're on right now, maybe like the novels and essays of James Baldwin or Toni Morrison. So how do you see, I think, following what you just talked about, the personal and the political coming together in this expression of what is in your life and what's beneath your eyes or beneath your nose? How do you see that coming together in your art?
It clashes a lot, I guess, for me. I know my music took a huge turn in the direction that it's in now when I first got on my own. I was in school before that, just messing around. I didn't even graduate. Like, I was literally just messing around in school. I was smart, but like, yeah. And when I got home and had to get a job and had to get an apartment and pay for, you know, everything myself, I was doing that, you know, but it's just, that's when I started to learn about how stuff works, you know what I'm saying? And how the world works and how bills work. And wait, this doesn't make any sense. Why am I? But I have to, because, you know, that's how that goes. And, you know, just learning all of these things and seeing all of the BS, you know what I'm saying? Like, whoa, they're getting over on us, you know what I'm saying? So many different ways. And that's when my music started to sound like that. But for me, for the Waters, for the healing component, they absolutely mirrored huge life lessons that I learned. The Waters was everything that I went to jail for 32 days, and then the 7 months after that, the Waters was based on that 8-month period, like everything that I learned in that time. The healing component was based on, I had broken up with my girlfriend, and then we got back together. And the 6 months before we broke up and the 4 months after we got back together, that's what the healing component was based on. You know what I'm saying? Like everything I learned in that moment. And all these things that I arrived at that I then was trying to figure out how to put in song. So Daniels Bloom, pray for me. Just holler at me, I'm pray for you. Try to make a play for you. Won't you show me love? It was just a very real situation where I had told a homie, we weren't agreeing, and I told him I would pray for him. He took offense to me saying, all right, bro, I'm gonna pray for you. And he took offense. I think people say that facetiously to people all the time. And I was dead serious, I was sincere, and it just made me think about the idea that, you know, saying that to somebody sincerely, I'm gonna pray for you, sounds negative. You know what I'm saying? It sounds like I'm calling you crazy. It sounds like you need prayer, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I challenge that with the idea that actually, you know, prayer is rather selfless. You know what I'm saying? It's considering somebody else, especially when it's genuine and it's felt like that, and it absolutely could be a representation of love, right? And so all of these ideas were coming from my real life experiences that I was just trying to figure out how to communicate that to people, even if it wasn't as directly as telling them that story. And that is where all of my conceptual ideas come from. I can't have, right now, I'm about to drop another album soon and it doesn't have a concept. It's because I'm fresh out of big life-changing stuff right now, you know what I'm saying? So it doesn't give me a lack of things to talk about, but I mean, that is why I feel so successful with those concepts. I think trying to do something so heavy gets lost sometimes, you know, in your efforts. And I think that I was able to stick to it and keep it consistent because it was literally just mirroring things that I was going through at the time. So.
Yeah, I don't think of my work as intentionally being political, but I think like as a Black artist, that's what happens when you write about things that are happening, kind of like we were talking about before. And I just think about all the young Black girls who go to school with their curly hair and then they're told like they can't be in school because their hair is distracting, and then it becomes a whole big news story, and like that's just someone's body, that's just like a human being, and it's the structures and the way that things are set up that it becomes a whole big conversation about, you know, what's right or wrong about it. And I think I remember when Black Girl Soldier was like the first song that I wrote from the album, and it just was a really cathartic, therapeutic experience for me to write it. And it was just like, I didn't even realize how sad I was and how angry or upset I was about everything that had been happening, not only in Chicago, but around the country and world to Black women. And that song allowed me to feel those things that evening when I wrote it. And then after that, I realized it was a very useful song. Like before I even recorded it, I would just sing it a cappella places, and people would say, oh, can you come sing this at the protests? And I like art that has utility to it. So whatever that is, like for me, like if it's useful for me, if it's useful for my community. So I don't think of it in terms of like, is this political or is this personal, but is it useful to me or to people that I care about?
Thank y'all so much. So I have more questions, but I feel like I'm being selfish. So we want to open it up. to the audience, and we'll take our first question right here at the hour.
I have a question for Mick Jenkins. Who were some of your favorite musicians when you were a kid that may have influenced your style today?
Where my style is completely influenced by everything my parents listened to. My father listened to contemporary gospel, and my mother listened to a lot of neo soul. And the neo soul probably influenced me more than anything. I mean, I've retained a lot of the gospel music, but I don't know. I feel a way about rap sounding like gospel music in any way, and I know it does, just because it's been, from the years. But Bilal, Erykah Badu, Jill Scott, Sade, Kim, Maxwell, on repeat all day, every day. And that was all I heard until I was about 14. So that's absolutely, like, those people still stick with me today. I listen to music as a very therapeutic thing now. I write so much music and I'm listening to so many beats. Like, I don't listen to music the same way I used to at all. And when I do just, vibe out to some music, it's the stuff that I love. It's the stuff that reminds me of my mother. You know what I'm saying? It's the stuff that's familiar. It's the stuff that I know that I am not going to skip anything, And the newest artist to creep into my library is Anderson .Paak. Before that, it was James Blake. And before that, I hadn't had any new music in a very long time. That's just how I process things these days. But those artists have been the biggest influence for me, for sure. Yeah, Anderson .Paak is a great rapper and singer, and James Blake. I think, like I said, for me, I'm looking for something different. It's not just good music, it's not just catchy stuff, but it's gotta be something that affects me deeply, and I want to listen to. I have 212 songs in my iTunes library, and I listen to them over and over and over. You know what I'm saying? So it has to be something at that level, and if it's not, then it's cool. It's just not in my library. But Anderson .Paak, James Blake, same people, yeah.
I really like Moses Sumney, and yeah, I think I like Steve Lacy a lot too.
So Mick, I know you said you guys, both of you guys chant Your Name Gypsy. You guys are killing the game in Chicago and talking about, oppression and public corruption, but at the same time, the media is not showing you guys much love with, bloggers. I know, like, you personally, you don't really mess with bloggers, but some way, somehow, the media is really starting to portray, like, Chief Keef and all these other drill rappers that aren't really talking about, substantial, significant things in the community, but they receive all the attention compared to what you guys are doing, all the positiveness that you guys are doing in the community. How do you guys feel about that?
The world, there's no good news network, It's like the other stuff more. And when I say we, I just mean what, the consuming population, the consumer, the people that they care about. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what they care about. We could speak about a lot of other reasons why that's the focus as well. But at the end of the day, it has never been the people like us that get put to the forefront. Chance dropped $1 million in Chicago Public Schools. The next day, they put out a front page paper about how he don't take care of the kids. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, and that wasn't even true. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, this is what happens when people, are doing and are championing the community and working for the things that they speak about and are, you know what I'm saying? Like, we've watched that happen over and over and over and over and over again outside of hip hop, So I don't think this is any, there's no reason why we would have it easier. There's no reason why they would react differently. There's a bunch of reasons why we could focus on Chief Keef, and I think there's just the same reasons why we just don't get as much attention. I don't know. I feel indifferent about it. I feel that as long as I'm acquiring fans, you know what I'm saying? As long as there are people that are hearing me, as long as there are people that are continuing to get put on, I can't. I mean, what can I do? You know, I don't rely on them to spread my music. I don't rely on them. You know what I'm saying? I think those are things that are to be spoken about when we speak about the influence of music. I think when we speak about the influence of music, we take away a lot of the responsibility that should be given to the people who share the music, the gatekeepers of the radio, the gatekeepers of the magazines, the gatekeepers of, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think they have a lot more responsibility with what the influence of music can do, because they give certain music the access and refuse the access to other music. You know what I'm saying? I think it should be brought up when we speak about it in that sense. But outside of that, I think a spade is a spade. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how I look at it.
I feel like I must be in like a Chicago bubble, because I feel like the media is always talking about Chance and No Name, but maybe it's just what I read. But I do think that when people talk about Chance and Chief Keef, sometimes it feels like a comparison that maybe isn't always the most accurate, because to me, young Chicago authors, we teach in the Juvenile Detention Center where Chief Keef used to be a student, and those students in there have stories to tell that, you know, might sound different from students that get to go to YCA or students who grew up where I grew up. And so I think that's important, like what Chief Keef is doing. He's reporting on his life like artists should do, I think. And I think that the way that the media or music industry likes to prop people up from certain places is messed up, but not to take away from that artist and what they're saying.
All right, so we only have time for one more question because Mick and Jamila have to get ready for the big show. So, anyone has a last final question? Go right here.
Both of you guys get to travel the world, and at one point, this was something that you may have said wasn't possible. What do you think made your dream achievable?
I think my community, for me, like being a part of YCA, and literally there's an open mic every week, and everyone we're talking about from Chicago, I've seen them on that open mic stage, you know, when we were just all, like, I feel like I'm such a fan of each and every one of them, and have been like since that day, and there's still people who are there every Tuesday who I'm like, oh my God, I that's who's in my playlist. It's literally like mostly Chicago people. And I think seeing that and seeing what other people in my community have made possible for themselves, and how everyone is doing it in their own way. It's not like there's one path or one way that success looks like. And I really look up to the people in my community, and I think that's made me able to envision what I want for myself and envision a space that I want to make and the career path that I want to have.
God, first and foremost, for sure. I definitely told myself a lot of these things would never happen. I had such a warped understanding of the way that this industry worked. And fans, which then means the product, right? But I think, especially as far as, you know, music in general goes, we're made to believe that, you know, without a machine, there's not very much we can do. And I've come to learn that without product, there's not very much you can do. If you have something that is going to build a loyal fan base, they're not going anywhere. You know what I'm saying? If you have something that's going to build a wavering fan base, then whatever you have, you better, you know, keep it. You know what I'm saying? But I think that even if I dropped a whack album, there's a lot of my fans who would just be supporting me, like, because they're loyal, and it's based on what they received from the good things that they like about my music, and I do think it is to highlight the good things. I think that when you're being, you know, somebody feeding you good soul food or somebody feeding you an array of candies, you know what I'm saying? Like, even if the lady who cooked you the soul food didn't get it right, you might go back there before you go back to the donut place. You understand? I don't know if that's a right metaphor, but like I just feel like, I think it is like, you understand that you're receiving something, you know, especially as far being all over the world. Been real deal, been in places where people don't. Drink more water, right? That's what people do at the show. I was somewhere where I wanted to say spread love. Say, yo, we gonna switch it up. When I say spread love, y'all say spread love. Spread love, water. Like, it's just the syllables. That's all they was with. You understand what I'm saying? It's just like people really didn't understand me, right? So they definitely didn't understand my slang. You understand what I'm saying? They definitely didn't understand some of the stories that I was telling about that are unique to Chicago. Why are they here? You know what I'm saying? I think people really feel, you know, something when you have something to give them. And that is why I'm here. Because I have something to give people and they feel it. And it's allowed me to develop a loyal fan base. And you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what's allowed me to exist in this space.
All right, so we just want to thank you both so much for the generosity. What you all bring into the world, we're very thankful for. And we can't wait to go celebrate with you in a couple hours.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Same.